Thank you very much for that introduction, Iggy. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good to be back at UX South Africa. Lekker om terug te wees, dat ek sommer iets in Afrikaans sê, want ek praat nie dit meer so baie nie. But great to be here. Juan talked a little bit about masks, and Iggy mentions my beard. I think the last time I saw many of you, the hair was up here, and it was clean shaven here, so it's just a bit of a turn. But Johan talked a little bit about masks, and something I don't think they figured out quite yet is a mask for the bearded man. So every time I have to wear a mask, minutes later my beard stands like this. So I tried the other day when traveling to wear two masks to see if I just cover the mask with a beard and if that will work, but no luck yet. So great, thanks for having me today. I want to talk to you a little bit about collaboration in product teams. A lot of what we do involves working with other people in the organization. And without working together, we can't really get great product out the door that works for our users and for our business. Now, Juan also mentioned a little bit in the first talk about working with stakeholders and the importance of working with stakeholders. Lizette spoke a little bit about the need for diverse people in a team. So these sort of points also build on well to the topic I want to discuss with you today. Great, then a little bit about myself. I'm not going to go into everything here because he already introduced myself. I've mentioned that I've worked and lived in South Africa, after that in Dubai, also in a travel organization. As Iggy mentioned, currently in Düsseldorf in Germany, where I'm leading the experience design and research teams at Trivago. And yeah, also did my PhD in institutionalizing UX in organizations. So let's get into the topic a bit, right? So often when we hear the word collaboration, I think it can be perceived as a bit of a buzzword. So, when we say, oh, we're going to collaborate on this new product, the expectations are there, or we collaborate somewhere on one step, we do one workshop together, but then we go back to more handovers, as an exchange. So collaboration is something that we often say we're going to do, but we don't really do, right? So today's talk, we're going to talk a little bit about what are ways to, look at collaboration in our product teams. So I'm going to list here a few sort of typical challenges, that I assume a lot of us here on the call might have experienced before. Such as, when we get work, I don't understand why we are doing this. Or my product manager told me to do this, so I'm just executing. The research has been done, but it's not making it into the product roadmaps. Or usability testing done too late. Or, sometimes we get, we think about an idea, wireframe it, present it to people, maybe to top stakeholders. That's a great idea, but how long will it take? Is it feasible to do? And then maybe we don't have the answers to that question. Also, let's talk a little bit further then. So after engineering is brought into the process, sometimes we have to do trade-offs, quite late, change our designs because of technical trade-offs. Edge cases that crop up late. Oh, we didn't think about this or that. We need to add that to the design process now. Also, sometimes when something is built, we see, oh, wow, what has been built is actually quite different than what we have designed. Or even further that, what was built lacks that polish and craftsmanship. So really, a lot of these problems are caused by a lack of collaboration in teams. Now, there are many different techniques for collaboration. And what I want to talk to you about today is some examples and techniques within product teams. So I don't want to prescribe to you what to do in this talk, but rather give you a few examples of lessons we've learned, what has worked for us, and how we collaborated within our product team. So let's then look first at the concept of dedicated product teams. So when we look at this comment here from Teresa Torres, quite a thought leader in discovery, she's got a fantastic book there, Continuous Discovery Habits. She says most successful digital products today are conceived and delivered by a cross-functional team composed of product managers, designers, and software engineers. So looking at this true collaboration in dedicated product teams, really a product team is a group of people who bring together these different specialized skills and responsibilities and feel real ownership for a product or substantial piece of that product. Now, these three critical roles, or it's critical for digital products. They are collectively responsible for ensuring that products create value for the customer in a way that also creates value for the business. Now, also a few call-outs to make. There's obviously, as teams grow and teams get bigger, there's various other roles that complement this, such as maybe when we grow from getting specific UX researchers or data analysts or product marketers. There's these roles. I will talk more around the UX position, sort of combining, these type of design and research skills, for example. Also, a few things to call out on this triangle or this true collaboration. This is not an hierarchy, and certainly it's a flat structure. The PM should not be the boss of anyone in this product team. So it's really about these three different skills, being able to work closely and collaborate together. So the idea is that these skills, we define products collaboratively, not sequentially, and working on solutions together, right? I would further give you a comment here from Marty Kagan. He's got a fantastic book that I really recommend reading, Inspired, How to Create Tech Products That Customers Love. He says, if your company is not yet set up around dedicated product teams, this is probably the most important thing for you to fix, as everything else depends on it. So I also want to give that context that, the next items in the list is quite difficult to achieve. Some of it can be done, but, until that dedicated product teams, is fixed. So some of these books that I've mentioned, just adding a slide here, really recommend, Marty Kagan's book, Inspired. He talks about how to discover and deliver technology products that your customers will love and that will work for your business. I've done 3 of their workshops as well with Marty and with Christian Idiodi. And it's so valuable to understand this. They talk a lot about this from a product manager point of view as well. So that we really understand, that view of it. Then we've mentioned Pretorius, the Continuous Discovery Habits. It's a book that was released this year. Definitely recommend that. And of course, Dan Brown, a thought leader in practical design discovery. Right, so let's move on then a little bit to a few other topics. So we talked about dedicated design team. Now, research exposure to the whole team. So this is really about, getting everyone involved that influences our design decisions and exposure to them. So it's not just the designers or researchers, right? We must expose our developers, product managers, stakeholders, other influencers who guide decisions, for our users. So all of you would know Jared Spool, of course. He's got a very interesting quote here. The more our team members are exposed to the users of our designs, the better our designs become. When team members don't have enough exposure, that's when they make poor design decisions. Also to mention, he's got this weekly, videos that come out, workshops that come out. It's free to join. Welcome to the Leaders of Awesomeness. If anybody's not done that yet, really recommend that you have a look at that. So let's talk a little bit about, how this has worked for us, some of the principles and benefits we have seen when we're exposing UX research to the wider group. So that first concept, wider team exposure. So it's no longer, it's not about somebody going out alone, doing the research and bringing back a report and saying, here's the findings. It's about involving the team, viewing the research, taking the notes together, and even facilitating the results. So, where designers or researchers, but even thinking about, okay, how can product managers, for example, how can the wider team even talk to users? That leads us to more increased trust in UX research. So when we open up our process, it's getting the team then from the first steps now also involved in planning and analyzing the research. And also when we are done with a study to that, making all the raw results available to everybody. So just again, building that transparency and trust with the wider team. So I've given you these results, but here's the raw results available if anybody wants to have a look at that. And you would see as we do these things, you actually have much more of a successful chance that the findings are making it into the roadmap. And it's part of the day-to-day discussions. So with research embedded in the teams, we see, part of the day-to-day product discussions. So decision-making, the stand-ups that we have, design critique sessions, building prototypes together as a few examples. So it's really key there that we see the research insights then are constantly referenced, considered, and checked against or added to product development. Now, a few examples I'm going to show you for this. Now, we use a tool called Mural, very similar to Miro. So the team capturing notes together in a live, a customer session. So involving people with different skill sets, we would give them on a Mural template, something to use like this. So a lane for each customer, a high-level questions, sections that, for this question, you can put your notes in. They can easily use these sticky notes, like the blue is the more positive things that they saw, and red is sort of the concerns or issues that they saw during this interview or usability test. Just at the bottom, give you an idea. So this is an example where 3 different people joined and then completing this, with their notes. So that is the capturing part. Then an example of how we then could do collaboratively the analysis. So taking all of those notes, this is an example of an early prototype of our weekend product. So we would divide this into different sections, and then, having sort of these notes where we have the analysis of everybody sitting doing it together in one place. And also for those that could not join, as a place that they can easily access these notes. So the idea again here is doing this analysis as soon as possible after the study. So for example, recap after each customer, add in the notes. So again, shortening our cycles, increasing the speed, so that you can immediately take these findings and improve a prototype, for example. This is just an example I want to show you of what something like this done on a large scale. So we did this big diary study with over 60 people in the US and as well in Australia. Over 2 weeks, 3 weeks, where they had, followed them around, basically, where they told us everything they were doing when traveling. So this is just an example of this team working together, and for each customer, capturing these notes together. Another key thing to mention is the visibility of research, right? So this is something that we also then share with the wider team. Just a quick agenda. Hey, here's the time slots we're going to have. Here's the links that anybody can join into. We also then have, a place on that Mural board, for example, where people can go exactly and see the history of the tests. So they can access the test plan or the Mural notes of the team, sort of moving together. And with this whole process, what you would also notice, with the dates is moving then into weekly research. So taking this embedded team, we are able to talk to customers now on a weekly basis, improving our prototypes, updating our prototypes, and talking to users. Quick one, that same Mural board would also have a history of what was tested. So this is an example of a header for our weekend product, how that's iterated. So one can go into this Mural board and easily see how did we get to where we are today. This is also very valuable when you have new joiners and new people, into the team, that they can quickly catch up with their onboarding. Right, this leads us then to co-creation. So a typical example of co-creation, is our design sprints or ideation workshops. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of what a design sprint is. There's books, for example, by Jake Knapp with the sprint book. What I do want to do is a few call outs on the key collaboration points in such co-creation sessions. So here's just an example again when we've done it remotely, like a design sprint with a group of people on Zoom. Overall board that you can see from like our Again, Mural, where everything that we're going to do for this design sprint being accessible to everybody in one place. Now, Mark Elliott, he's got a nice book, Collaboration Design. He's also got on YouTube, there's a name you can have a look, Collaboration Design, what collaboration is and isn't. He says, a shared understanding is the foundation for collaboration, right? Now, let's look a little bit at what creates a shared understanding. So when we talk about everybody in the room with, what's the goals and problems we want to solve? What are these problem statements? What are the jobs to be done? It's also about us reviewing the current product together, review previous work and A/B test results, and review data and UX research we have on the topic, as well as reviewing competitors together. So these type of inputs all helps us to get a shared understanding of, okay, what is it we're trying to solve? How are we going to get there? A few examples with the team brings normally, a jobs to be done type of framework. We bring the pain points from UX research together. This is just a nice one to show you everybody doing collaborative competitive analysis. So not just the product manager, not just the designer, not just, it's everybody in this team again, together looking at competitive analysis. How we typically do that is in such a session, we first give individual time. Let's say there's 5 competitors we want to look at individual. Then after that, we go into pairs of 2 or 3, where we then put all the different notes together. Right, so then moving on a little bit to also what Dan Brown talks about in his book is, diverse perspectives help your team to explore new ideas. Very important call out, prioritize the right things and look at the problem in different ways. So it's really, again, that concept of getting these critical roles all involved early. Now, this is a very valuable quote for me that Marty and Christian said at these workshops, is that if your engineer sees what you want to build for the first time in sprint planning, you have failed as a designer, you have failed as a product manager. So it's really, again, that concept of involving engineers early. So involve them in the discovery, not at the first time seen in the sprint. And they go as far to say that if you're only using engineers to code, you are only getting about half of their value. Moving on to co-creation. So again, Mark mentions here, collaboration at its heart involves co-creation. So talking more about the co-creation here. This is just an example that many of you might have seen, old Crazy Eights. Such a simple example to get everybody to be able to share their ideas and get their thinking, going. Just take a piece of paper, fold it a few times. There's 1, there's 2, and 3 folds, 1 more. And now you have a canvas where you've got basically like 8 mobile screens that you can design on. So we typically, and this works remotely as well, ask people to sketch on it. Here's a few examples, and then add that to that Miro or mural board afterwards. And if you look at this example, like the designer in this team did all nice, summer, autumn sketches here. But this very nice, more neat one was actually done by a product manager. So yeah, just interesting how different people, we always think the designer is going to have the best, sketches here, but that's not always the case. Okay, so this leads us to rapid concepts and prototyping. So we have the shared understanding, we sketched the ideas together. Now we want to conceptualize these ideas. So based on these things, we create these prototype concepts. And this also allows the team then to understand more and ask the right questions and find the right questions to ask. So we take these prototypes then to talk to users where we test value or usability. We talk to engineers to test feasibility, what we build here, how does the API work? Getting a little bit more of a sense, can it be done? And of course, going back to the stakeholders with these concepts like, hey, do you think this matches, what we had in mind for our business objectives? So again, it's really about quick learnings. Here's just a quick example for you on how we've iterated again, like on our weekend product. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but based on these concepts, we are able to quickly iterate, test with users, and update. Right. Let me pause for a second just for a sip of water. Right. So the next topic, of course, moving with from here is working with engineers, right? Um, so here we talked about design sprints, how we work, but we also need to talk to the team. How are we going to work together? Um, so Tina Shen from Slack, many of us use Slack in the room. She says, talk about how you're going to work together. Establish a rhythm, right? Now, this is also very important, especially if you are new to a team, if a designer engineer is working together for the first time. So it's not just talking about the features and the designs, but talking a little bit about how you're going to work. I'll give a few examples in a moment. So let's, what's the type of questions we can discuss with the engineer? So from a designer point of view, when and how am I going to share the design work? Establish with the engineer that I'll be sharing this really early. Then asking the engineer, what design decisions should be made first that could help them potentially to identify any blockers or big items we need to consider. Also, what are design decisions that will be difficult to change later? So getting a bit of a discussion going on these things. A few more now from the developer's point of view. So when we ask him, how can I give you as an engineer more polish and craft feedback, right? How can I give that feedback to you? When will the early builds be available that I can grade from you to give you that type of feedback? And how will I be able to find and track design bugs, when we find that? So again, having this sort of relationship, talking about these things, talking about that way of working early on. And as you go through a few products or features and working together, these things do come a bit more naturally. Final call out here on working with engineers is, as designers, even if our work is well documented, it's not just about handing over and share the link and, hey, here's the abstract file. But again, it's important to sit together and talk through that, talk through those designs. So again, this goes back to that early concept that we spoke about, a shared understanding. Now, when we don't do this, it's so much easier for somebody to just look at us and, I'm sure that's what they meant, and go ahead and develop. And then we see some of the challenges we were speaking of again. So having these type of conversations with the engineers also just helps us again create and take that shared understanding concept further. Tina Shen and Garrett Miller from Slack, you can have a look here if you look for this building together. They have a nice YouTube talk also on how designers and engineers work together. Another example I want to show you quickly is bug bashing and dog fooding, right? So this is a session we have with, again, everybody in the team, these QA sessions with cross-functional members, where we give, come up with a scenario for each member of the team, walk through the product, document any issues found. And the idea about dog fooding, what that really is knowing your own product. So getting as much exposure as possible, being able to give feedback to the team. So again, it takes away that handover, right? From my design is done, now it's development time, now it's QA time. But getting everybody, involved in the dog fooding. I'm not going to go into the agenda now in terms of time. I want to wrap up by talking to you a little bit about design critique sessions. Now, this again is such a valuable technique for us to further the continuous collaboration with the team. So a few presentation tips, especially when we do remotely, to have a look at. Now, again, it's about that shared understanding. So starting off when we talk about our designs, not just saying, going directly into the sketch file or what and say, here's the design, what feedback you have. But again, reminding people of what were the goals and the metrics, the problem statements. What's the latest data that we have? And if we go further along, again, how's that current A/B test performing? If we need to remind people of where an idea comes from, referencing back to competitive analysis, for example. So really continuing that shared understanding. Another one for the design critique sessions, with the different people in the room, it's very important to show the differences. So when you have a current or new design, or you have various options, it's important to call out, because if you just show it, people might just think, oh, it's just a different picture. But you really need to call out and say, these are the differences. This also just helps more structured feedback, right? So otherwise people will not comment on the rest. They will just comment on the picture, or they will, give us wrong feedback. Maybe we're not really looking to know if the picture's working, but the most important UX part is, some behavior here, for example. What also helps is illustrating it in a journey, right? So how did the user get there? Where do they go to afterwards? Visibility, again, this is key to collaboration. So we've got this Slack channel called Design Critique Sessions, and we've got a daily design critique session where we share topics in this channel for people to say, hey, today we're going to talk about this. So people can also decide, do I need to be at the session to give feedback? Last few ones to wrap up with, zooming in, right? So this is also one of the things we presenting remotely. As a designer, I might know my thing so well, and I've got a big screen next to me. And I've often seen that where we don't zoom into the details. And what we also see, the people in the room, they won't ask you to zoom in necessarily. They'll, if you don't zoom in, it's an opportunity lost for that type of questions to get more detailed feedback. Another one is pause for questions, right? So often what we do, we've got maybe 5 different design options that we want feedback on. We move so quickly between, them. At option 3 or 4, your audience has already forgotten what was in option 1. So taking that time to say, okay, that was option 1, pause for questions, pause for feedback. And the final thing is, people are at this design critique session to, now they've taken this effort to give you feedback. It's important to follow up on this feedback. So either at the next design critique session, say how you addressed it, either individually in a call or a Slack, but it's important to close that loop, right? So yeah, finally, design critique sessions is great for that feedback and continuing the whole collaboration approach. And yeah, I think that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope some of these examples of collaboration would help you, and I hope there's something that you can take away and apply in your environment. Thank you so much.
Marco, thank you so much for that insightful and awesome talk. It looks, there's a few comments from people in the chat. We've got one question over here. So before I ask the question, please remember to, if you guys can populate all your questions in the component, and then I'll ask them to Marco. So the first one is, what software tools do you use to create the mural where everyone can view the whole project? And that is by Andre.
Great. So I think I've traditionally used Miro first. We moved over to Mural. I think they pretty much have the same functionality. But what is really great, we normally see, okay, there is a little bit of a learning curve, right? So we would have in each Mural board with a new workshop a little section on how to use it, that people can have a look. And we ask people before the workshop starts just to go and have a look. But I think Mural is quite flexible, where it's a nice central place to find everything else. So we also add links to documents or to videos that would go somewhere else, or links to other websites. It's easy enough to put in screenshots, put in drawings of like the sketches. So it's quite a flexible tool to add all of these things. Plus, it has the ability then, okay, if you don't want like some things, it's just better to put it in a document, right? So link out to that document. Does that answer your question? Great.
That provides me with an answer. Hopefully, I think Andre is happy with it as well. I'm just waiting for some more questions to be added. I think while we're waiting for questions, maybe just to add my 2 cents. I think now with the idea of not the idea while everybody's working from home, or many people are working from home, or this due to COVID and Corona and so on, co-creation and collaboration is required now more than ever. And I think many people and companies are understanding that due to challenges. And your talk has highlighted, how to manage that and how to facilitate that a bit more, I guess, efficiently. So I've definitely benefited from what you shared. Let me check if there's another question.
Yeah.
Another question here, this is from Seth. Great talk, Marco. How do you settle the politics of who owns the experience in the interactions and collaborations between engineers and designers? My view is design owns the whole thing. And this is from Seth.
Thanks, Seth. Thanks. Yeah, that's an interesting question, right? So I think what we found is the best way when you talk about these dedicated teams is the whole team takes the accountability. Because, I mean, Jared Spool also talks about this a lot. It's not just the designers in the real world that make the real decision, that make the decisions, right? So you might have something, but there's a very important business thing to consider. Product managers make decisions. An engineer might make a decision. So I think that concept again of letting people get exposed to the UX research. Jared Spool talks a lot that people then start to get a design literacy, that more people in the team start to realize what is good design and bad design. So I think that's really the challenge around if we collaborate like this, getting people to understand that and allow us to make better decisions. So again, with that concept of Marty Kagan also has a new book, Empowered Teams, right? So it's really about being able to have those conversations with your peers to get to the right solution. We normally don't work in an environment that says, okay, this is this person's call or that person's call. We ask the team to go figure it out, right? And figure it out through prototyping, for example, through A/B testing, getting something up, lightweight out that we can learn from. Yeah, so get into that sort of learning environment and asking the guys, yeah, it's okay to take risks. Let's learn in the discovery approach. Let's see what we can learn, in our A/B tests and so forth.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Marco. I hope that answers the question, Seth. So we don't have any more questions. If there are any questions down the line, if you do want to reach out to Marco, he is available on LinkedIn. He is available. I mean, I don't think you're as active anymore as you used to be on Twitter, but definitely on LinkedIn. So if you do have any questions, I'll be more than happy to share his LinkedIn details and email if required. Yeah, Marco, thank you so much again for the insightful talk.
Thank you, Iggy. Thank you, everybody, for having me.
So we're